right, everyone is here right now. I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the April 3rd, 2025 meeting of the City of Columbia Board of Zoning Appeals. I am Catherine Fenner for the board and will be serving as chair for today's meeting. At this time, I would like to introduce the other members of the board. We have Colton Davis, John Gregory, I'm Catherine Fenner, this is Jonathan Vang, Sherrod Duval. All right. I would also like to introduce the staff that assists the board: Andrew Livengood, Zoning Administrator, Erica Hyen, Deputy Zoning Administrator, and Madeline Bowden, Land Use Board Coordinator. The board is charged with hearing applications for special exceptions, variances, and administrative appeals. All testimony is recorded for the record, and anyone wishing to speak will need to be sworn in and come to the podium to speak. No testimony can be taken from the floor. When you come to the podium, state your name and please speak clearly into the microphone because this meeting is being recorded. Applicants with cases before the board are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the board or staff regarding the case. Any member of the public may address the board in intervals of 3 minutes or 5 minutes if by a spokesperson for an established body or group of 3 or more. The applicant then has 5 minutes for rebuttal. The board reserves the right to amend these limits on a case-by-case basis. Those of you who plan to speak must be sworn. If you are here as an applicant or to speak in any case, please stand at this time and raise your right hand. Do you affirm or attest that the testimony you give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Okay, at this time, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Livengood.
Hi, good afternoon. First, I would like to apologize to the folks out in the audience for the technical difficulties. We do have a slideshow, but it is not making it to the screen, so I apologize for that, but I guess we will be adapting to the time before we had such technology. That said, I'm going to read from the consent agenda. And the first item on the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March meeting, the March 6, 2025 minutes. Oh, yes. And then we also have a case which is 2013 Hardin Street, Unit C, tax map number 11408-0102, and it is a special exception to reestablish a convenience store within the CAC district. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent? Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
I have a question about the Hardin Street application. It just, in the application, it says the applicant's business model includes no alcohol sales. So by approving that, does that mean there's no alcohol sales? Or is it just their business model says they're not going to do that?
Right. So the materials before you, as part of the application, state that there's no alcohol sales. So that would be part of what has been reviewed as a special exception. And so they would need to conform with what they submitted.
Do I have a motion to approve does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing no objections, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the March meeting and the case on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. We will now proceed with the regular agenda, which I'm waiting to come up. The first case is an administrative appeal of the zoning administrator's determination of distance requirement conditions for a smoke or vape shop.
Yes. So this first case, as you said, is an appeal of the zoning administrator's determination on the distancing requirements for a smoke or vape shop. I believe the attorney for the applicant is present, and then I can, of course, address the board as well.
Okay, so I believe we have Mr. Toby Ward coming, who does need an introduction, but at any rate. Okay, Mr. Ward, can you please state your name for the record?
I am Toby Ward, and I am an attorney, and I do practice law in the city of Columbia, and I have the pleasure of representing the Blackbird Shop. And Mr. Livingood is correct.
You mind? holding
Speaking into the microphone a little better, it's kind of,
Is it working, Andrew? It says work, okay.
Same, yeah, it's just. Thank you. Maybe I should sit down and talk. Mr. Livingood is correct that this is an appeal of his decision. I'll give you a little background. The proposed operator has a lease with the owner of the property, and both the proposed operator and the owner are present today, and they're going to say a thing or two. What I want to say is this, that and Mr. Livingood correctly stated the issue, which is how do you measure 1,000 feet? And in the materials that we submitted, it's pretty set forward pretty clearly, I think, but the grounds are that the churches and the charter school are not within 1,000 feet when you measure the property or the distance by going from door to door. Mr. Livingood reached his determination by a straight line or radial method where you simply draw a line from the proposed location to the uses that might be offended by this use. And what we want you to do is to consider which is the proper method to use, whether the straight line method as the city has proposed or the walking method as we proposed. And we think that, the ordinance as a whole has to have some practical, reasonable, and fair interpretation, and any ambiguity in the statute should be resolved in our favor or in the ordinance. And this ordinance doesn't say which method to use, thus we're here today. If you apply the straight line view, as the city did, then you have to fly over buildings, walk through buildings, and trespass on private property to find that there's less than 1,000 feet. We think that the practical common sense view is to use the walking method, and in support of that, in addition to it making common sense, the city has an ordinance which specifies when to use the straight line method in the case of a sexually oriented business. And this ordinance didn't say which method to use. So we think that the best and most practical resolution of this is to use the walking method. I'll also say that that's what the state of South Carolina uses for tattoo parlors and alcohol sales, is the walking method. And so that's essentially, that's it in a nutshell. It's pretty simple. And with all due respect to my friend, Mr. Livingood, I think that if you rule our way, that'll be the right way to rule. I am going to ask the property owner and the applicant just to say a few things, unless you have some questions.
Just curious, what is the distance using the walking method?
If you use the walking method, it's a bit over 1,000 feet. I have in my materials, it gives you the exact measurement, and we inadvertently omitted the measurement to the charter school, but when we did it this morning, it comes out to be on the walking method about 1/3 of a mile, and so that would be over 1,000 feet. And those are the measurements on the other 3 locations, which are churches, most notably the Greek Orthodox Church, and then 2 other churches that I'm not familiar with. But if you do the walking method, it's over 1,000 feet for all 4 of those locations. All right.
any other board questions? Okay.
Christian, why don't you go next?
Hello, my name is Christian Jones. I'm the property owner of 2101 Main Street, and we've done similar things before. So we've done the project across from Cromer's Peanuts. We did the project across from Benedict College, really making an effort to take a lot of these old buildings and breathe some life back into them. Our tenant mix is usually diverse. We don't really have a preference per se. But yeah, so on this property in particular, we did the same thing that we've done on every single property. It's called out the zoning and essentially ask if, what restrictions there were on businesses. We have a tattoo parlor that has just moved into the property, and from my understanding, they had the same measurements. Everything that I've Googled says that they have the same measurements, and they've just moved in pretty much right next door to this unit in question. Since signing the lease, we've done an enormous amount of renovations to the property to prepare it for occupancy, as well as the tenant. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys' time and considering our appeal.
Thank you.
Hello. Yes, my name is Anwar Aziz, and I'm the owner of Blackbird. At this point, I have spent almost over 50,000.
Speak up a little bit.
Sorry, I have made an investment like over 50,000. At this point, I usually follow like zoning, like when it comes to like vape shop, and I called the landlord at that time, and he said it was the city kind of allows the smoke shop. And I told him like, okay, I'm called zoning, and he was like, there's a tattoo shop coming next to you, and we just proceed, like with the lease, and we got the lease, like ready, and because I saw there was no smoke shop, close by, the shush were a little bit far, and at that point it's just like I didn't really got like a letter from the zoning that will say that this allows a smoke shop, but it doesn't allow it. So it was just like a phone call from the landlord saying that there was no issue. And I have like spent, like with the floor, fixing the whole place is almost like over $50,000. And I really appreciate the zoning. I mean, you can say the law where it has like, where there's no smoke shop that comes next to you. I do have a business in Hardin Street, and there's a lot of vacant place, so I would not want, a competition. For myself, I would not want to open a second store like across the street. So it was really a very, very, you can say considered law that not, you wouldn't have like 3 or 4 smoke shop in one street next to a school, next to a church, next to daycare, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Okay. Do any board members have any other questions for the applicant?
I have a follow-up question for Attorney Ward. I'm just trying to make sure, I read your materials, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the current position in the proposal. So the original rejection was based on a straight line method from edge of property line to edge of property line?
Yes, sir.
And you're proposing that we take a walking method
Yes, sir.
from the closest door?
I think the way the ordinance reads is it goes from property line to property line. I may need to be corrected on that. But I remember in the ordinance it said something about the boundary.
Okay. And when you were making the measurements that you put in the letter, were you using the shortest practical walking distance?
Yes.
Like, was there a shorter route, basically?
No, sir, no. We went the most direct route without obviously going through a building or trespassing on private property, so we would follow the sidewalks.
Understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone who'd like to speak out in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is John Wilkinson. I'm the president of the Elmwood Park Neighborhood Association, and we are here to express our strong opposition to this appeal. Aside from the technical merits, the idea of putting a vape shop across the street from our regional homeless center to such a vulnerable population just seems absurd. So we're strongly opposed.
Thank you, John. Would anyone else like to speak? All right. Would anyone like to, would you care to rebut, Mr. Ward, or are we okay?
Give a lawyer a chance to say something, and invariably they will. I would just say that Mr. Aziz's operations are always within the strict confines of the law, number one. And number two, we all know what a challenge it is on this part of Main Street, and these businesses, while they may not be something that I would frequent, they're lawful businesses, and so there should be no reason that they be discriminated against if they're permitted by law. Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
And Madam Chair, I would like an opportunity to speak as well.
Please.
Yeah. First, I just want to address a brief item about the tattoo parlor and their requirements, that they are different requirements than a smoker vape shop. The requirement for a tattoo parlor is 1,000 feet from another tattoo parlor and 100 feet from a residential zoning district. And so that location does meet those requirements, which again are separate from the distancing requirements for a smoker vape shop. And just as a reminder, the UDO does say that a smoker vape shop shall not be located within 1,000 feet from a public or private K through 12 school, child daycare facility, youth center, recreational facility, park, church or religious institution, or community center. And then also it does say it shall not be located within 1,000 feet from another smoke or vape shop. So the walking method that Mr. Ward has proposed is a method that is within state law or state regulations as it applies to specific uses. One being, I believe you mentioned a tattoo parlor, but the other thing would be a liquor store. Now, at no place does our ordinance suggest this method for measuring. And, our UDO, therefore, is the document that we do need to look to when we're determining how to measure. In his materials, he did mention places where our UDO does specify a straight line. However, that doesn't mean that in other places it is not a straight line. And, the UDO does give mechanisms for interpreting when it is not specified, and so I follow those to the best of my ability. One is a common sense meaning, or a meaning that would be in a dictionary, and certainly something is within something if you draw a radius around it. And also it does suggest that we look to legislative intent, and when the smoker vape shop ordinance did go before City Council, it was part of the packet that they considered, where it said this would mean that there is, smoker vape shops would be no closer than. And so being no closer than would preclude finding a way of measuring that makes it a longer distance. Certainly, Eric and I are sitting, within a certain distance of each other, but I could draw a line that did not follow a straight path that would be further than that distance. So That's the short version. I did go into much more detail in the packet, and I will spare you all those words, but I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Do we have any board questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go
Cole.
ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Can you clarify the method you used? Was it property line to property line at the extremes, like the closest points, or did you go door to door but a straight line overhead?
I went from the walls of the suite to to basically the premise of the other use. And so it does provide a little bit of flexibility when to do that way. So if you have a multi-tenant, multi-use structure, so think of, let's say, for example, a shopping mall, and you measure property line to property line, you could have something buried within there, and it is well over 1,000 feet from another use. And so using that method, though, again, there were those 3 religious institutions and a school that were within 1,000 feet.
And then my only other question for the moment was, you listed a number of different criterias of places that we weren't supposed to be within that distance from.
Right.
And I think the main points of contention are listed in Attorney Ward's letter. Are there any of the categories of places that you listed that make it all a moot point? Like, are there any that are 300 feet? If we talk about a community center, transitions, or...
Sure. Not to my understanding. I was trying to, look at those uses as they're classified and determine if these other uses fell under that category. Now, it might be something that is operating in a way that I'm not 100% aware of, but not to my knowledge, no.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. I just think I want to ask this question for clarification for myself and the board, but also clarification for the audience, because I think this may be an important question. It certainly is one to me. I just want to make sure that we're clear, because the Zoning Board of Appeals is responsible for special exceptions, correct? This particular case that's before us is for a reversal of a determination that was made by the zoning administrator. What I'm trying to figure out for my clarity, for the board's clarity, and for the audience's clarity is, are we only looking at the special exception based on the determination of the zoning administrator's decision? Or are we also required to look at the special exception request that this board is responsible to consider for special exceptions presented before the board? Is that, you
Sure.
understand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So these are conditional requirements for the use. It is not a special exception use. So if a property or a location meets these conditions, then they are allowed without needing a special exception. Now, sometimes, in another case on our agenda today, it is a special exception use that has additional criteria. In this case, it is a conditional use. And so if they can check the box, that they are located there. And that does provide more certainty for the applicant and also for the community that if these conditions are not met, that it does not go there. So this is not a special exception. It's also not a variance. And specifically, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, basically, if it is 1,000, if we determine that it is within 1,000 feet, then we would deny it. And if it is outside 1,000 feet, we would, or whichever, did I get that wrong?
If you determine that I made the measurement correctly, you would affirm my decision, which
Right.
would have the effect of denying the operation at that location, yes.
Okay.
Just to continue what I was saying, so this is also not a variance request.
Right.
This is not a criteria that can be varied. So the applicant cannot come before you to ask for a variance and say, I'm not 1,000 feet, I would like to be allowed within 950 feet, for example. The criteria is not within a section of the UDO that that is allowed to be varied by the board. It is a performance criteria.
Okay, so essentially today, what the zoning board of appeals responsibility is to consider whether or not the ruling of the zoning administration is correct
That's
according
correct.
to the rule of the case and the criteria.
And right, and what the UDO asks me to do, yeah.
And so the sole issue for the appeal is the distance?
Is the distance.
Well, it is the distance and is, my office and myself, are we doing what we're supposed to do in the eyes of the UDO?
Okay,
Uniform development or uniform, what's UDO?
Unified Development
Unified
Ordinance.
development.
Unified Development Ordinance, right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I have a question more not related to the procedure, but just, can you talk us through some of the history of this? Because Mr. Jones said that he called to make sure that the use would be okay, and they've invested a lot of money. Like, can you give us some validity to that? Like, how did we get here?
It's a good question.
I'm not aware of anything beyond. Yeah.
So there was
Oh, it-
no
right.
document, no email, no written documentation back and forth between the owner, the tenant, and the city of Columbia? This,
Yeah, I provided what we had in our records.
okay. So this deal was done without consenting the city to see if it would be approved, is what I'm understanding.
As far as I know. I mean, again, it's a use that's allowed in that district, subject to those conditions.
Okay.
Subject to,
The not being within 1,000 feet of schools, churches, et cetera.
I just wanted to
So
clarify. Is it
at what
subject
point,
to
yeah, at what
conditions?
point did y'all get involved then? Like, how did y'all know to, yeah,
It was, I believe, at the application for a business license.
okay. Okay.
I have a technical problem. I've just, for some reason, have gotten into a Zoom workplace. So if there's a technical person, I would like a motion at this time for us to go into executive session for the receipt of legal advice. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're going into executive session for the receipt of legal advice. We're back in session. I believe we have a motion.
Yeah, I'm gonna make oh, yeah.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
do you have a motion to come out of executive session?
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, I'd like to make a motion that upon the receipt of legal advice, we move to affirm the decision of the zoning administrator and support his method of straight line measurements, meeting legal requirements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Yeah, we need to keep this confidential. All right, and the next case.
Try. Okay, the next case on the agenda, 2025-009-SE, is 3806 North Main Street, tax map number 092130122. And this is a special exception to establish a residential care facility for veterans within the CAC district. And the applicant is here, and I believe he'll present to you.
Okay, if you would come forward, please, sir, and state your name for the record.
My name is Daniel Brinkley. I was born in South Carolina, so I've been gone for like 30 years. I lived in Las Vegas, have worked in Hollywood for the last 30 years. And John, I'd like to tell you something. You're wasting your voice. That's a voiceover voice if I ever heard one. I'm an author. I write books and do TV shows. But I spent 42 years as a hospice volunteer in the VA. I understand what's happening in the VA. I watch and see what's happening to our veterans. We have 18 million veterans, 18,470,000 veterans today. 13 million of them are Korea and Vietnam. The housing need in the next 2 years will become so overwhelming that you guys will be pushed and everybody will be pushed. What I'm after is this. When I look at this piece of property, the school at 3806, when I look at it, it's perfect for being able to develop in the size apartments that the government is requiring. When you were listening to, when I was listening to that it's about home health care, I mean, literally the system that you were describing, what we're trying to do is create housing for veterans that they are paying for their own resident. The concept of where the VA is going to go is called aging in place. This is where it's going to go. With as many veterans that's in Colombia who are in my age group, I'm a 75-year-old veteran. You're about to have 6 million looking for housing.
In Columbia?
No, in Colombia, right now, what's appropriated, what we're looking at is 370.
Thank you.
We can house 370. What we're looking at is maybe 45 in this apartment place. So we're looking for anything like that. What I'm asking, there will be people in this who are paying their way. You know, no rehab, no alcohol treatment. No place. These are people who have made their way in life, who need a place to live, who may need services and access to the VA. When we were talking about the term that Andrew was just telling us, the aging in place concept, when people get in there will come a time when they're going to need help. They're going to need a way to go to the VA. They're going to need a way to get around. Most of these people will have their own cars. Most of the people have everything that they need. What I'm after is this change so that we can take this building, that of the 4 times I've been to this building, 3 times we've had to have the police come up there. We've had to have the police come and get the people out. They're stealing stuff out of there. They haven't broken anything, but we were there yesterday, and this is what had to happen. I was just telling Andrew, when I was growing up here, The only reason you went up North Main Street was you were crazy or you were looking for dope. Okay, this is what it was. And when I look at how well this has come and how well it is being developed, I would never want to do anything that would affect that. Okay? And when you bring a community together that are people who have served this country, who can pay their own way, who have an apartment, there are certain requirements. And when you look at the term agent in place, if we do all this before they become necessary to be agent in place, it puts the pressure back on the VA to support them. I am desperately, after 42 years, watching the government. I understand the mechanisms of how the VA works. I know how they work, what to do, and I'm trying to get ahead of the curve. Why? I happen not to need this. I came home to retire. I happen not to need this. But that doesn't make me walk away from the need of my fellow service people. So I came and got Mike Lester out of retirement because he's always honored his father. And he'll probably tell you this, but his father fought in the Pacific, Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima, a Marine. What did he come home to? And that's who raised this boy. And he's trying to do the same thing. And he's a contractor and he's the building manager. For me, I need this variance. And I need everything that you can do to help me. And I'd like to thank Erica for how much she has helped us. I mean, come on. We've woven through so much of this paperwork. I'm used to it from the VA. But with Erica and now Andrew literally taking our hands and holding our hands to get here, I'm just thankful because I know the need's going to come. I know the fact that today this will become famous today, because this is what the VA is looking for and they don't know it, but I know this is what they're looking for. 42 years will tell you that. So I'm going to turn this over to Mike. I'm here to do anything I can to help, to push and support veterans. And John, you're wasting your time. If you ever heard a voice, listen though, I do this all the time. My life is this. I make TV shows. I listen to the sound of people's voices. Voiceovers is gigantic money. You have a perfect voice, though.
He has a day job. If we could try to stay on the things.
My point is just when you see a way to help somebody and you know it's a need out there, why not help? So I'm asking for help to achieve goals, to give veterans who serve this country a space that they can come together, a community center where they can interact with each other, because two things that happen to veterans when they lose their wives, which is so much, helplessness and loneliness are the drivers. And why? 22 veterans are killing themselves literally every day. 22 a day, average age 52.3 years. I can do something to affect that. Maybe not on the grand scale of 6 million, but I'm back home in South Carolina and I'm gonna fight for these people. We got Parris Island and we have Fort Jackson, we have Augusta. Augusta has allowances at Aiken, South Carolina for 870 that will fund these programs. So I'm asking you to help me in everything that I could do. I just appreciate what's happening and what we want to do. I'm going to leave that to Mike. I don't know how to build anything. I'm a writer. And, and I try to give people jobs in the business, but just appreciate it. And thanks you for helping me, and thanks Erica and Andrew. So please help me help them. Mike Lester.
It fits me.
Your name is?
Mike Lester.
Okay.
Generally, a brief description of my role as project manager, okay? We have been building teams. This is sort of a public-private cooperative effort. We're looking at schools, closed churches, all sorts of properties all over the state to fill this same need. And that need is for affordable rental housing for veterans. Now, these are annually renewed, just like a regular apartment. A lot of these guys, when they come in, are gonna have jobs, they're gonna have their own transportation, and they may not need help for 5 years. But they're in a location where that need evolves, that there's counseling and communication to tell people what the next step is available to them. So we're trying to fill that niche. There is no drug rehab, no alcohol use, no homeless property. This is all stable rental apartments that just all happen to be veterans. And we have a nonprofit who will take over the operation. I'm more involved in acquisition, getting permission to find out what we need to do next, and then bringing in the architects, the engineers, the contractors. I get it built, and I hand the keys over to the nonprofit, and then they staff it and run it. This is a troubled property, in my opinion. And we're talking about a situation of permanent residency and permanent supervision. I think it's a benefit to the neighborhood. It's an attractive property. All our work is interior renovation. We're not building any new structures on the grounds. So it's all going to be internal, subject, of course, to fire marshal restrictions, building inspection restrictions, and anyone else who has a jurisdictional role. But we have standards for the VA that we try to meet and then make them work with your regulations. So operationally, that's basically what it is. If we buy it, I get it built, I hand the keys to the nonprofit, and I try to go do another one. That's my job. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Who's the nonprofit that'll be taking over management of the property?
Veterans Helping Veterans, they're located in Charlotte. In fact, we just toured with them yesterday. And they are very, very enthusiastic. And it's two nonprofits. But I think it's going to be, this is still an evolutionary thing, okay? We're breaking ground in a lot of ways because there are an awful lot of programs at the bottom end of the scale. The 90-day programs to get people off drugs and cleaned up, and then you supposedly turn them out, they don't have anywhere to go. So they end up right back in the program. And so these are people who are just like you and I, you know, we can pay our bills and come and go and enjoy our life. So I hope that's straightforward.
And who's the second nonprofit? You said there were two?
Go ahead.
Second
We're gonna tag
nonprofit
team.
is Low Country Veteran Services in Charleston.
Low Country,
Veteran Services.
Low Country Veteran Services. Thank you.
I have some particular questions, if you could, because to grant a special exception, we need to actually peg it to things besides, it seems like a good idea.
Well, I understand.
What are the, do you think there's going to be an impact on vehicular traffic or pedestrians?
It shouldn't be because, you know, there's a direct entry off North Main. It's an enclosed fenced parking lot. There's more than adequate parking for 40 residents and staff. And I don't see how it would be detrimental.
Okay.
Park across the street. There's a lawyer's office on one side who's already voiced his support for us doing something with it.
Okay.
And I know we may have to go to some HOAs to address their needs.
Okay, and I don't see that it seems like you're going to be improving the aesthetic character of, I don't see any additional noise, lights, glare, vibration, blah, blah, that seems like it's gonna be fine. It seems like you're probably actually improving the aesthetic character of the area.
I have a question about that, actually. The Veterans Helping Veterans Association, the nonprofit that you're talking about, is that for homeless veterans?
No.
So the veterans that will be taking over this property are not homeless?
No, there's no homeless program on this property.
These are working,
These are all independent living,
Make it
50 to
have to have jobs.
50 to 60 years old, generally speaking. And like I said, most of them have jobs, their own transportation. And as they age, they are in a position where they can get information about what their next step needs to be. This is a very tightly focused group.
I only ask because the Veterans Helping Veterans Organization is a organization for homeless veterans. So that's why I was asking.
Among other things, but they've got chapters in several different locations. But
I
this
mean,
is,
that's what their mission states, is there for homeless veterans. So that's why I was wondering if this was a homeless facility.
it's not.
Interesting, okay.
See, we just agreed to work with them yesterday. This is how fast this
Okay.
is moving, so.
So
Because I like
just-
the idea of it improving the building, but if we're moving in homeless people,
Sure. No, we're not moving in homeless people. They've said that.
concerned about that.
Drug rehab,
No drug rehab, no alcohol rehab.
none of that.
Okay.
Comes out to be where people who are meeting certain requirements.
Sorry to interrupt, but we just need to have one of y'all speaking at a time. And
Thank you,
then
John.
And then come to the podium to speak,
Okay.
yeah. And y'all, I think we're going to have a chance for the public to speak, and then y'all can get a chance for rebuttal, so.
I'm sorry, if I could just keep going down my list of requirements. I don't think it seems like we're going to be less likely to have law enforcement response. That seems about right. I don't see a proliferation of the same or similar types of special exception use. There's nothing in the area. And I suppose it's consistent with the character, so I suppose we're okay there. So, all right. I think we're done now, unless you have something else you want to add?
I have some amendments I need to go over with them on the paperwork side, but I'll take care of that. And
Okay, all right.
thank you very much for
All
your
right,
time.
thank you. Okay, do we have anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition? Come forward and state your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Hart, and I am here in a dual role. One, I am the lawyer's office who is right next to this proposed special exception. Secondly, I serve as the state representative for North Main. So I'm here on behalf of my constituents to gather information. I cannot tell you whether we're going to support or oppose the special exception. Just for clarification, I heard the gentleman speak that the lawyer was in support. That is not accurate. I'm the lawyer. I do not support this because I don't have enough information to support it or deny it. I do have some concerns, though. I'm a veteran. I served in the Persian Gulf War back in 1990, so I'm fully supportive of veterans. I serve on the Military and Veteran Committee at the State House in the legislature, so I'm full support of our veterans. But there's some questions, I looked at the application, there's some questions that I had that were not answered in the application. One is, it is listed as a residential facility, and one of the things I wanted to know and the community wanted to know was, what are the criteria for acceptance into the facility? If you do have a substance abuse problem, if you do have a substance abuse or psychological PTSD concern, are you accepted? We need to know that.
I believe he answered that they are not.
Okay. What are the demographics of the veterans? Will it be men? Will it be women? What are the age groups?
Men.
All men? Okay. Are there any restrictions, like, for instance, loitering? Any curfews? Will there be any on-site alcohol consumption? And here's why, and I heard the gentleman said, no, there will not be. One of the concerns that I have is, as a developer, as he mentioned, one of the things that their role is to hand it off to someone else. We would like to hear from the folks who are going to be handing it off to, those two nonprofits. We want to hear from them. We also want to know about any other facilities that they're managing currently right now, because what we want to do is pull the crime stats on those facilities. That's very, very important to us. We have a lot of pedestrian traffic on North Main. We have a lot of unsightly pedestrian traffic on North Main. We have a lot of criminal pedestrian traffic on North Main. So North Main is in a transition right now. And I'll tell you that I live, work, and play on North Main. My office is right next to this facility. I live in Columbia College, so I'm fully invested into the community. What I'm concerned about is bringing this facility without having enough information. So what I'm going to ask is, if the committee, if you would defer a decision until we can get more information, and more importantly, if we can get buy-in from the community. We do have some community members here. I don't know if they want to speak, but we do want to have more information so the community can speak. I do have some other questions that I did want to put on the record. What are the daily activities of the residents? What are some other facilities that we can look at as examples to see the track record? One of the things that I saw in the application was that it was a proposal for 30 apartments. However, I heard the commentary that they're looking to seek 45 different, or 45 members, or 45 veterans. But in the application, it mentions that they're going to be single use, single occupant. So I don't know how they're going to do that. One of the other things that I looked at was that I'm very familiar with the school. I've been inside, I've been outside of the school, is that the development, they did a proposal, and I know this is an approximate number, but it's very low. 1.2 million is a very low number for the proposed development that they're seeking to do. 30 apartments at 1.2 million is low. So we did have some concerns about that. Let's see. Let me see what else I had. The role of the VA, as far as will there be medical treatment for the veterans, not substance abuse, but medical treatment for the veterans. Speaking to a gentleman, information that I received is that the VA will be very active in the role out at the facility on a daily basis. Will there be 24-hour security? Will it be armed security there during that particular time? And so to your statement, Ms. Finner, you mentioned that there are no other facilities. There are several facilities in that area. 2401.
Veterans facilities? Veterans housing facilities?
Residential facilities for men.
Oh, okay, okay.
So 2401 Main Street is Christ Central Ministries.
Right,
That's not even a block.
right.
If you go up North Main and you go on to Monticello, then Duke, right across from Hyde Park, there's another residential facility. So North Main is already inundated with residential facilities. So we do want you to take that into consideration.
Okay.
I think I heard the gentleman about whether the residents will have vehicles, whether they have jobs, any employment. And here's most important that I'm really concerned about. What is the role of the developer after the development is done? I heard the gentleman say that we hand the keys off, but do they play an active role in the facility once they finish the development? Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you.
And you said no one else would come forward at this time. They're just here in support or for more information. Would anyone else like to come forward?
They work here.
Okay, all right.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Quarles. I am a resident of 29203. And I do have a lot of concerns of this facility that is wanting to be developed, that we have enough of residents, of pedestrians that are causing a number of problems in that area, up and down North Main, the City of Columbia, Richland County Sheriff Department, they have a lot of traffic that they have to deal with. And building with this, having this facility to come there and not having, a lot of rules and regulations that I'm hearing would be not sufficient for this type of development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Support her.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Audrey Reed, and I'm the president of Fairwald, Harlem Heights area. And yes, I agree with Kim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone else like to come forward? Anyone else like to speak?
Good afternoon. My name's Lyman Munson. I'm the Vice President of Hyde Park Keenan Terrace Neighborhood Association. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the neighborhood leadership and to pass the message on that we're surprised. We haven't heard from the applicant. If we hadn't received the agenda, we wouldn't know this was going to happen. Neighborhood communication program says that owner, operator, manager should provide information that they contacted the local neighborhood association to explain what this is about. We just heard about it for the first time. The business plan. Owner, operator, manager should provide a written business plan that describes at a minimum number of residents, uses, and activities that occur in conjunction with the use, security plan, provisions for transportation of residents to and from the facility, staffing information. We don't have any of that. We can't make a determination. To comment on community care homes, we have a lot of them. We have small ones with 3 residents, up to 10 residents. I live across the street from one that has 40. Been there a long time. Residents are free to come and go, just wander the streets. But that's where they live. But they're not restricted at that property. So they walk it around anywhere they want. Walk in my yard, ask me for $1. I'm not suggesting that veterans are people that would do that or anybody in particular would do that. But that is the reality when you live in a disadvantaged neighborhood. So I can share the concerns of my fellow residents that we need to know a whole lot more about this. So we think either a deferral or, decline it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Would anyone else like to speak? All right, you may come in and rebut.
I'm not rebutting, but
Pardon me?
I'm not rebutting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston?
Yes, I just thought I would take a moment and certainly, afterwards, if the applicant would like to rebut. But I do want to draw your attention, and it is in a case summary, that there are those additional criteria for a residential care facility. And amongst them, it is that they are supposed to provide written verification of certain items. So, and that it does include, a business plan and the neighborhood communication program. So, just be aware.
Did they do that, to your knowledge?
No, we've not received it yet. No.
I see, I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not trying to rebut anybody. Thank you for your service. I've been watching this for 40 years. I understand what they're talking about, these residential facilities that they're talking about. It's rack 'em and stack 'em and house them. And yes, there are veterans like that. And yes, there are veterans who work in the system, and I understand it. I'm trying to change that model. I have watched this over 40 years, and whether people realize this or not, the government is about to dump 6 million people on everybody, and you're going to take them whether you like it or not. What I'm trying to do is create a model that shows that people can get involved in the community. Some will have jobs, some will need jobs, but to be productive in the community. The model that the system is using, I know what you're talking about. I've seen these. They're drug rehabs. They're rack 'em and stack 'em. They're anything but helpless, but they're helpless. And they're wandering the streets. I'm not having any of that. I'm not going to have it that way. There are people that come out of the service that had a system that they operated for 20 years, 8 years, 10 years. You come back into civilian life, when you roll back into the world, into civilian life, you are lost. So the government set up facilities that were transitional housing. but you are required to be sober, you're required to be straight, you're required to have a job, and they give you X amount of time. I looked at that model. It's the best model they have. But there are people who deserve housing, who can pay their own share. They can pay their own way and want to be a part of the community. We're trying to create a way that the collective community can come together and bring something to the place that they are, not beg, borrow, or work the system. I've watched this 40 years. I'm not saying resent, I also don't appreciate people who serve this country. And because we are not doing everything we can to support them with facilities like we're trying to create, instead of what they're having to put up with. We were watching people get thrown out of this building. Out of the 4 times we've been there, 3 times, people that they're describing had to have the police come. I'm not gonna have any of that. No, I can't tell people what, if you're paying your rent and you're working, I can't tell you where you can drink in your apartment or not. I can't tell you that. But I can tell you this, I'm gonna put the VA in a place where they're gonna have to be responsible, you know? And I've watched how you weave this web of how you make the government more responsible and the VA more responsible, and that's why I'm up here. And I just don't like how we see our veterans. I don't like how I just heard I see those veterans, because I'm like him, I'm a combat Marine, and I can pay for my own way. But we have to have a system, everybody, that allows them to incorporate back into reality and make some working and acceptable citizens and not beggars, not housed so the government doesn't have to pay any attention to them, and put them on the streets where we, the civilian or the civilian population, has to be responsible. There has to be a transitional place. There has to be a new model put into place where we don't look down on these people, okay, that we try to uplift them. Okay, where's traffic and police and all of that? I want to put the government in a place where they protect the neighborhood from the system I just heard. I'm not doing any of that. If drugs and rehab, some transitional housing become necessary, because what they're describing is transitional housing.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
That point. So Councilor Hart, he raised Representative Hart, excuse me. He raised a point asking about what the involvement would be once the keys are handed off. Can you tell us a little bit about what the involvement would be?
Well,
how what you're proposing, because the cause is admirable, but how does what you're saying, once the keys are handed off, how does that happen?
well, once it's done, once the building is done and it's able to be occupied, then we have 2 nonprofits now looking at the model, because where they are, they're in Rackham and Stackham, and they're in transitional housing, and they're going through the same thing that I just described. Why they're looking at it is our model's completely structured. Once the building is done, I don't really care about what happens to the person that finishes it. I don't know how to build anything. I know how you manage it and run it, and I know how to get the government involved in it.
Could we
So-
perhaps then hear from someone who will be able to tell us a bit more about it? I mean, I appreciate that you're passionate about this issue, but if we could please get some information, that would be much more helpful.
I'm for it. I just don't like to hear veterans being described as beggars and I don't like it.
All right.
Mike Lester, I apologize for any misinformation. Well,
I'm sorry, could you speak to us? Thank you.
I apologize to the gentleman. If you have to understand, I'm a builder, I'm not an attorney, and I didn't fill out the form properly, and it can be amended, and that's what we're trying to find out. If that's our next step, and it means a deferral, give us time to meet with the neighborhood associations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can we go to board discussion?
Okay, can we move into board discussion? Motion, do I have a motion to move into board discussion?
I move to go to board discussion.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
I think we should defer.
You wanna, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we'll see how the motion carries. Very admirable cause, want to support veterans. I'm not a veteran myself, but had two guys I grew up with in the Iraq War, shot himself, killed themselves, two different guys. So like, definitely worthy. But, you know, for the model you're trying to create, we have no model here. I mean, you just filled out an application very quickly and did not really give any thought to it other than it's a good idea. It doesn't appear. It doesn't appear. There's nothing, there's no floor plan, there's no business plan, there's no rules and regulations of the center, there's no covenants, conditions, and restrictions. I mean, you have a representative, Hart, who's a former veteran and wants to support you, perhaps, but he's got nothing to go off of. I mean, we've got to spend some time here to think about this right. We can't just approve it, in my mind, or disapprove it with what we have. So with all due respect, I mean, I support you because it is a worthy cause and we got to figure out a solution as a country. So I'm just going to say that. Like, I think we're going to move to defer this, but when you come back, please come back with some more information, because if it comes back like this, then, you know, that's not putting forth much effort. And we really want to hear from the people you're handing off to. I mean, I think that's worthwhile. Those are going to be the people that are admitting the applicants. They're going to be doing the background checks. They're going to be enforcing it. I mean, you've got, in other situations, I mean, without getting into specifics, but when a developer hands it over to a managing company, you learn about that management company, and they come forth and speak to what they're going to do it, how they're going to do it. And so we've got to hear that. I mean, this is not, you know, this is not it's not a small deal. I mean, we want to give it the right thought and the proper thought that is warranted by it.
And I would also ask.
That's what I got to say.
And I would also ask that you need to reach out to the neighborhoods. That's a serious oversight. Sorry, sir, sorry,
That's what
sir.
we thought we were doing, dispersing.
Sir, you're out of order. Thank you. I think we need to reach out to you need to reach out to the neighborhoods, and we need to have a security plan in place and things like that. So I would ask that we defer this, if I have a motion on that, or any other
Motion to
suggestions?
defer. I want to, just to add to the record, I think, like, you guys acknowledge it's very early in the process. Somebody just came on board yesterday. That kind of adds to the case that it's a bit premature. There were procedural things that didn't happen. I don't think we can remedy that in time to make a call today. And I don't think we have enough information because of how premature it is to the case that, that the community has made to even decide whether we meet the factors that we're supposed to meet.
I agree with John and Catherine and Cole, and I'd just like to ask, just for clarity, the administrator, what is it that's required when it comes to the community conversation that the due diligence had not been done? If you could just clarify that for the community so they can know.
Sure. There are two things. And the part that is the condition of a residential care facility is a neighborhood communication program. And it says the owner, operator, or manager shall provide written verification. They provided local contact information to the adjoining neighborhood associations or businesses for the documentation of any problems they may have with current business practices that impact adjacent neighborhoods or businesses. So it's basically just, it's opening a line of communication so that the community surrounding knows who to contact if there are issues.
Thank you. I think that's speaks to what Catherine was speaking about earlier. I think that due diligence is absolutely necessary before we can move forward on this. I think deferment is the right thing to do.
And there's other veterans organizations in the Midlands. I mean, SC Thrive, there's one up on North Main Street. I was looking it up too. I mean,
I think we don't need to beat this to death.
I know, but
it's getting kind of late. Could I have a motion to defer this?
I motion to defer.
Second?
Wait, don't we need something added to that motion to defer? Don't we need to add something, John?
What would you
no,
like
I
to
don't think
add?
so. I think we just defer it to when they reapply. Correct, Andrew?
Is that wording right?
They would not necessarily need to reapply, but if they are deferred to, let's say, the next meeting, or they can, if they say they need a little more time, then we would re-advertise, of course, and repost the property.
Yeah.
So what sort of a motion?
Motion to defer.
Okay.
That suffice.
Motion to defer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Case is deferred. Do we have a motion to adjourn? What now?
Was Hardin Street on consent?
That was
Actually,
done.
Madam Chair.
We did that already. Yeah, yeah.
I actually, there's one small bit of additional business.
Yes.
And I just want to mention that we do have a new board member that will be joining us at the next meeting. And she's been watching today, and
Okay.
her name is Sydney Lanham.
Okay.
And, oh, okay, she did leave, but she was here earlier during the meeting. So
Okay.
Just wanted to introduce her.
Okay.
What was her name?
Sydney Lanham?
Sydney Lanham. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Very good.
Motion to
Wonderful.
adjourn?
Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done. We need to keep these, your legal memoranda are legal, yeah.